Have you ever just stopped to think about what actually makes you, well, you? If we strip away the complex systems, the organs, all the tissues, what is the absolute smallest, most basic unit of life that can survive on its own? It's a fascinating question, really, because the answer reveals the foundation of every single living creature on Earth. To put the sheer scale of this into perspective, think about this number for a second. 100 trillion. As a human, your body is made up of almost 100 trillion of these microscopic fundamental units, and they are operating right now, working in this perfect, intricate harmony just to keep you alive, breathing, and learning.
So in this explainer, we're taking a macro to micro tour of cellular biology. We'll be looking at the cell as a highly efficient, microscopic manufacturing plant, exploring the cell factory in full cell detail. By mapping the structures of a cell to the departments of a factory, the absolute sheer brilliance of biology becomes incredibly clear.
Here's our factory map for the tour. First, we'll start with the foundation of life, then move into command and production, and tour assembly, packaging, and power. After that, we'll break down the fluid Mosaic model and finally compare plant versus animal cells. Section 1, the foundation of life. Okay, let's dive into this by establishing the absolute core rules of our biological landscape. Before we tour the specific organelles on the factory floor, we really have to understand the three unshakable rules of cell theory. First, every living thing, from the absolute simplest bacteria to the most complex human being, is made up of one or more cells. Second, the cell itself is the smallest, most basic unit of life. And third, all cells come from existing cells. There is literally an unbroken chain of cellular division connecting you to the very first cells that ever existed on this planet. How wild is that? Now, looking at the biological world, there are essentially two main types of cellular architecture. On one side, we have prokaryotic cells, like bacteria. These are exclusively single-celled, drastically smaller than our other category, and they completely lack a nucleus. Plus, their DNA is circular. On the flip side, we have eukaryotic cells. These are what make up multicellular organisms like us. Eukaryotes have a distinct nucleus, linear DNA, and a highly complex system of membrane-covered organelles. Just think about the streamlined simplicity of a prokaryote. Beyond a protective capsule and a cell wall, that circular DNA just floats freely right there in the cytoplasm, entirely lacking a nucleus to house it. It might even have a little flagellum for movement. It's an incredibly efficient, streamlined organism. But for the rest of this explainer, we're going to focus on the highly complex eukaryotic factories that make up complex life forms.
Section 2, Command and Production. We are now officially entering the eukaryotic factory.
Every factory needs a control center, right? And for the cell, that is the nucleus. It's the largest organelle in the cell, and it's protected by a double membrane known as the nuclear envelope. Inside this vault, the cell stores its most valuable blueprints, the DNA. Get this, if you uncoiled the DNA from just a single human cell, it would be about 2 meters long. This genetic information dictates exactly how to run the cell and how to build every single new structure. Openings called nuclear pores allow very specific instructions to be sent straight out to the factory floor. And who actually receives those instructions? The ribosomes. While the nucleus is the absolute largest organelle, ribosomes are the smallest. But do not let their size fool you, they are the essential protein factories of the cell. These tiny machines relentlessly read RNA strands sent over from the nucleus and use that information to meticulously assemble amino acids into proteins. And since proteins are the building blocks for literally everything constructed in the cell, without ribosomes, production just completely halts. Section 3, Assembly, Packaging, and Power. Let's move into the processing and energy sectors of our plant. This brings us to a beautifully interconnected network called the endomembrane system. Think of the rough endoplasmic reticulum, or rough ER, as the main assembly line. It's covered in ribosomes, which is exactly why it's called rough, and it processes and transports those newly made proteins. Right next door is the smooth ER, which lacks ribosomes. It acts more like a specialized chemical plant, making lipids for membranes and breaking down toxins. Once proteins are built, they're sent to the Golgi apparatus, basically the cell's post office. The Golgi processes, packages, and slaps a new coating of lipid membrane around materials before shipping them out.
Finally, we have the lysosomes, the cell's waste disposal and recycling crew. They contain powerful digestive enzymes to break down food, wastes, and even foreign invaders. And it's brilliant how this workflow physically sits together within the cytoplasm. The large central nucleus is immediately surrounded by the branching sacs of the rough and smooth ER. And just beyond that, the Golgi apparatus is positioned further out, completely ready to receive transport vesicles from the ER, package them up, and ship them toward the plasma membrane. It is a highly organized, incredibly efficient physical workflow. But, absolutely none of this machinery works without electricity. Enter the mitochondria, famously known as the powerhouse of the cell. Enclosed in a double membrane with these inner folds called cristae, this organelle uses oxygen and glucose to generate ATP, adenosine triphosphate. ATP is the pure energy currency of the cell. Inside each mitochondrion are literally hundreds of microscopic machines called ATP synthase, just churning out the power needed to keep our 100 trillion cells functioning. Fascinatingly, mitochondria actually have their own separate DNA, totally distinct from the nucleus, which hints at a very ancient evolutionary history. Section 4, the fluid mosaic model. Now we're zooming all the way out to the factory's external walls. This cell surface membrane isn't just some static brick wall. It is a highly dynamic, selectively permeable barrier. Back in 1972, scientists outlined what we call the fluid mosaic model to explain this roughly 7-nanometer wide structure. The foundation here is a phospholipid bilayer. Each phospholipid has a polar hydrophilic, meaning water-loving, phosphate head that faces outwards. Then it has two non-polar, hydrophobic or water-fearing, fatty acid tails that face inward, hiding away from the water. This creates an incredibly effective barrier that keeps the good nutrients in and the bad toxins out. So the crucial point here is why biologists specifically call it a fluid mosaic. Well, it's termed fluid because the phospholipids and the proteins embedded within them aren't just locked in place. They can actually move around sideways via diffusion, kind of like icebergs floating in a lipid sea. And it's a mosaic because when you look at it from above, the various intrinsic and extrinsic proteins scattered throughout the bilayer create a pattern that looks exactly like a piece of mosaic art. This dynamic, shifting structure is absolutely vital for passive and active transport, as well as cell-to-cell signaling. Section 5, Plant versus Animal Cells. Let's zoom back out to compare our two types of factories. Comparing these two macro models reveals some really obvious structural differences. One is the fluid, organically shaped animal cell, while the plant cell is far more rigid, containing several massive internal structures that the animal cell completely lacks. Let's break down those unique factory upgrades. Plant cells require a rigid structure to stand up toward the sun, right? So they have a tough cell wall made of cellulose just outside their membrane. They also have chloroplasts. These are incredible biological solar panels containing green chlorophyll that actively turn water, carbon dioxide, and sunlight into glucose. Plus, they have a massive central vacuole just to store water and minerals. Animal cells, on the other hand, don't have any of these. Instead, they uniquely possess those waste-disposing lysosomes we talked about earlier, as well as centrosomes containing centrioles, which organize microtubules to help out during cell division. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this to ponder. We've just seen how perfectly these microscopic factory departments rely on one another. The nucleus directs the ribosomes, which build proteins on the ER, which are then shipped by the Golgi, all powered by the mitochondria and protected by the fluid mosaic membrane. If just one of these organelle types stopped functioning, the entire supply chain would collapse. So what does this all mean? It really makes you appreciate the fragile, breathtaking complexity of the 100 trillion cellular factories keeping you alive right this very second.